The greatest treasure of all in the Temple of Zeus has vanished. It was one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world. The authorities called on the renowned Athenian sculptor Phidias to create the masterpiece. He'd made his name with the statue of Athena at the Parthenon in Athens. In his workshop, Phidias and his assistants used the most precious materials. The body of the statue of Zeus was covered in ivory, and his clothes in gold. Once inside the temple, the god's head almost touched the roof. At an estimated 13 meters tall, Phidias's statue presented the greatest of the gods seated on his throne. A pool filled with oil served to maintain internal humidity at a level to prevent the ivory from drying out. This liquid also served to provide the mysterious lighting of the statue. The sculpture remained in Olympia for 5 centuries before being moved to Constantinople, where it was destroyed in a fire.
Married women were strictly forbidden from watching the games or even crossing the Alpheus River that bordered the sanctuary. The penalty for breaking this rule was death. Women caught in the sanctuary were thrown off a cliff that overlooked the shrine. Only young girls who were virgins were allowed to watch the games, despite the nudity and the brutality of the combat sports.
Unmarried girls, that is maidens, were allowed in because they were still in some sense wild. And also they had to get used to the idea of men being a part of their life. And what better introduction than to show them men performing completely naked.
The virgins had their own games in honor of Hera, wife of Zeus. It consisted of 3 sprints, 1 each for girls, teenagers, and young women. The track was shortened by a 6th to match the shorter stride of the girls.
Number 2. Naked exercise. When we think of the term gymnasium, we think of exercise, basketball courts, and sweating. The word we use, though, has a double meaning. It comes from a Greek noun that meant a place to exercise and a place to be naked. In ancient Greece, men exercised in the nude. They believed that doing so honored the gods. And in fact, the practice was so beloved that when someone tried to introduce loincloths, they were vehemently refused. The Greek gymnasium, however, was more than a place to work out. It functioned as a sort of men's club where they discussed politics and philosophies of the day. Young boys and older men met and became lovers in gymnasiums. It was an accepted practice of ancient Greek life because the older man was supposed to act as a mentor for the young boy.
The only reference to complete nudity was during their exercises and games. During the latter, young women would strip themselves and join them.
The first recorded games took place in 776 BC. They continued every 4 years without a single interruption for the next 12 centuries. The games were held in August under a full moon. Athletes had to arrive 30 days early for a month of training and scrutiny by the Olympic judges called the Helena Decai. For the games, Olympia would fill with visitors. 100,000 people from all ends of the ancient world camped in the fields and olive groves around the shrine. They came by sea and by land. They came from as far away as Egypt, from other parts of Africa, from Marseille in what today is France, and from Obbia on the southern coast of what would become Russia. Often they came from city-states at war with each other. The Greeks were notoriously quarrelsome. But such was the importance of the games that a truce of Zeus inscribed on a sacred discus and lasting 3 months protected all travelers to the shrine.
This particular vase shows the long jump, and in fact it's the best depiction of the ancient long jump that we have. The Greeks used weights for this event, which seems rather strange to us. People tend to say that the weights actually assisted the jumper so that he could jump that little bit further. The idea is that he swung them forward on takeoff and then back just before he landed, and you had to actually land cleanly on your feet. If you landed on any other part of the body, then you were disqualified. The Greeks didn't preserve records of distances or speeds. It doesn't seem to have been that important to them. It was the winner at that time who gained all the glory, and that was the important thing. But of course, when you think about it, they didn't have the means to record speeds very closely or distances, because they couldn't do anything like a photo finish. So it was actually what happened on the day that was important.
This is one of the most familiar statues in the world. It is known simply as the wrestlers. And that makes sense, because these men are Greeks, and the ancient Greeks invented the sport of wrestling. But this story isn't about wrestling, because that's not what these men are doing. So why is the statue misnamed?
That's what sparked my interest as a young boy, as a young Greek boy, as a young Greek Spartan boy.
There are some pancration moves that were only used in ancient times.
Finger breaks, small joint breaks, thigh gouging, biting, and the temple, the back, and the cervical spine, the groin area, from wrestling to striking to kicking. I mean, and that's what pancration means. Pankratos, pankration means all powers, all encompassing powers, everything involved.
And that brings us back to the statue called the wrestlers.
The fist and the turning of the guy's head, combined with the locking of the two bodies together, is the ultimate description or example of pancration.
An event held during the Olympic Games was the Pankration, which was a mixed martial arts style that blended boxing and wrestling. Most famous of the Pankratis was Arakion. During the 54th Olympiad in 564 BC, Arakion entered the Pankration to defend his championship. However, his opponent got the better of him and put Arakion into a chokehold. It is said that Arakion's trainer shouted, "What a fine funeral if you do not submit at Olympia." Arakion responded by twisting and kicking his opponent's foot and dislocating it. The pain forced his opponent to surrender, but unfortunately, the move broke Arakion's neck. Despite that, the judges named Arakion the victor. In death, he successfully defended his title. His fame spread as people held him up as the athletic ideal. Geographer Pausanias mentioned a statue immortalizing Arakion during his description of Phigalia, making it the oldest victor statue ever recorded. Number 10. Milo of Croton. The ancient Greeks invented progressive strength training. Milo of Croton won 6 Olympiads in the wrestling events. He also won multiple times at the Pythian Games, Isthmian Games, and Nemean Games. Milo loved to show off his strength and dexterity. According to sources, his favorite trick was to hold a pomegranate and have people try to take it from him. No one was strong enough to take the pomegranate from him, and he also managed to not damage the fruit. How did he gain such prodigious strength and skill? According to popular legend, Milo noticed a newborn calf near his home. He decided to lift the animal and carry it on his shoulders. He returned the next day and did it again. He did it every day until the calf grew to a 4-year-old bull. Thus was progressive strength training born.
The Spartans had a problem. The Persians had archers, and the archers could kill you from a distance. So the question is, how do we take that away from them? And the answer is, sprint up to them as fast as you can and eliminate their advantage. So the Spartans came up with a new training technique called the hoplite run. This is a classic example of how an adaptable, successful army takes care of what it needs to. After the Persian invasion of Greece, the Spartans added this hoplite run to their training regimen. Warriors would sprint in sandals or bare feet, wearing their full battle kit, including weapons, a shield, and all their armor. In total, about 60 pounds of gear, which, by the way, is close to what our Special Forces battle kit weighs today. Woo! What a training technique. Simple and effective, just like the Spartans. Now, I just ran about 100 yards with only a shield. The hoplite run, they had to go half a mile in the heat with full equipment. This tells you how tough those guys were. Any soldier will tell you that you have to battle test your equipment under all conditions to know that it will work for you at the right moment. And this is exactly what the Spartans would have to do. To take away the advantage of the Persian archers, they would have to sprint, close the distance, and kill them quickly. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Il y a un problème?
Dorothée Svanka!
Pas de problème.
Allez, vas-y, allez, allez, vas-y. Va leur montrer ce que c'est qu'un Gaulois.
C'est à nous, c'est mon village. Allez, la Gaule.
Tu vas voir.
Oui, enfin, ça va.